It hit me like a cold wave. "We're eliminating your position," Daniel said, his voice flat, no warmth, no hint of apology. I stared at him, 1,000 thoughts racing through my head, but nothing came out. 17 years of giving everything to this company, and this is how it ended. A single sentence. No build-up, no warning. He didn't offer me a handshake, didn't even look me in the eye. Just gestured toward the door like I was a stranger. "Clean out your desk by the end of the day," he added, as though it was just another item on his to-do list. I nodded once, feeling that strange numbness take over. My heart wasn't racing, my mind wasn't spinning, it was just empty. I stood up slowly, my hands trembling only a little, and walked out. There was no anger, no pleading. Just quiet acknowledgement that something had ended. As I made my way to my desk, I could feel the eyes on me, young coders I'd trained, now whispering among themselves, quickly averting their gazes. I wasn't sure if they pitied me or were relieved. Either way, it didn't matter. I'd been replaced, discarded, and they had no idea how much I'd actually built for this place. I began packing, slowly, deliberately, like I was just organizing my thoughts. My son's coffee mug. The cactus I'd kept alive for years under this harsh fluorescent light. The photo of my family, everything that had made this place feel like home was now being swept into a box. There was no drama, no shouting. Just the dull, heavy sound of my movements and a strange, hollow peace settling in. I had given them everything, and in return, I had nothing. I stood there for a moment, looking around at the familiar chaos of my desk. 17 years, and it had all been reduced to a few personal items in a cardboard box. My mind replayed the years, the long hours, the weekends I spent fixing problems no one even knew existed. I had been the backbone of this place, always loyal, always there when they needed me. From the dial-up days to the cloud migration, I was the one who kept everything running smoothly, quietly in the background. I trained every new hire, solved problems no one else could, and never once asked for recognition. It was always about the work, about doing my part. And now I was just gone. But there was no anger. No outbursts. I wasn't even sure I felt betrayed, not yet at least. It was like the whole thing didn't quite register. How could it? I'd given them everything. All my time. All my expertise. And this was how they repaid me. But I wasn't going to show it. I wouldn't let them see how much it stung. Instead, I just kept moving, slow, deliberate, methodical. The calmness was almost a defense mechanism now. It was the only thing that kept me from losing my mind. There was no place for anger here, no room for emotion. It was over, and I had to accept that. At least for now. As I packed, my thoughts drifted to the people I had worked with over the years. Some of them had become like family, co-workers who had trusted me with their problems, their projects, and their successes. They had no idea what was happening, what was really happening behind the scenes. They didn't know the layers of systems I had built, the workarounds I had created, the backdoor solutions that kept this place from crashing every day. But they would. Eventually. I'd make sure of that. I kept my head down as I methodically packed, each item another small step toward the end of an era. But there was something in the air that didn't sit right. As I moved, I could feel the eyes of my colleagues on me. They weren't even trying to hide it, glances that were quick and furtive, followed by the sudden click of a mouse or the rustling of papers. I had trained most of these people. Some of them had come to me for help, trusted me to solve their problems. And now, as I was being quietly shown the door, they couldn't even meet my gaze. Bethany from marketing walked by, her face tight with concern. She stopped for a second, her eyes flicking to mine before quickly looking away. "Jake," she said, her voice a little too high, "I just heard. This is ridiculous. You practically built this place." I gave her a small nod. She didn't know what to say next, but I did. I knew she was shocked, maybe even upset for me. But I couldn't afford to let her or anyone else see how much it hurt. I wasn't going to make a scene. I had learned long ago that the company didn't care about emotional displays, especially not from someone like me. "It's fine," I said quietly, barely loud enough for her to hear. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. I didn't give her any indication that I was anything other than calm, even though the truth gnawed at me from the inside. There was a reason for this, a reason they didn't want to talk about. A reason they were so eager to get rid of me. But I didn't say any of that. Not yet. I went back to packing, ignoring the stares, the whispers, the rising tension in the room. Something was happening beneath the surface, something I hadn't fully pieced together yet. But I always did. I walked to the security desk, my badge in hand, each step echoing louder than the last. The familiar beep of the scanner was strangely final, as if it had always been meant to mark the end of my time here. I had been with Meridian since its early days, before the glass towers, before the shiny new systems and endless meetings. I had helped build this place. I had fought through the nights when everything broke, brought in systems that the executives never understood but relied on nonetheless. And now, as I handed my badge over, it felt like I was cutting the last tie that connected me to the company I had built. The guard didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He scanned the badge, deactivated it, and handed it back. It felt like the world had gone still for a second, as though the weight of everything that had just happened had caught up with me in that moment. This wasn't just a job loss. It was a severing of everything I had given, everything I had worked for. No thank you, no acknowledgement, just the cold finality of a card being swiped. As I walked out the door, the realization started to sink in. This hadn't been sudden. This wasn't just some random decision by a boss who didn't understand me. No, this had been a carefully orchestrated move. Changes had been happening for months. I had noticed the subtle shifts, small adjustments to my access, the gradual exclusion from key meetings, the subtle undermining of my authority. They had pushed me out little by little without ever telling me. They had made sure I wouldn't see it coming, that when the moment arrived, I'd be out the door with no more than a box of personal items and a severed security badge. The quiet revelation hit me harder than I expected. They hadn't just fired me, they had planned it. And I had been too focused on my work, too loyal to notice until it was too late. I sat in my car for a moment, staring at the building in front of me, the place I had spent most of my adult life. It didn't feel real. 17 years of dedication, of loyalty, and now it was all gone in an instant. I had given everything to this company. My work ethic, my nights, my weekends, all of it had been poured into keeping everything running smoothly, making sure the systems I built didn't fail, didn't crash. I'd never asked for recognition. I didn't need it. I just wanted to do my job and do it well. But now as I sat there, the weight of it hit me. I had been loyal, and for what? To be cast aside like some outdated piece of equipment? I had given them the best years of my life, sacrificing time with my family, my health, everything, and this is how they repay me. By quietly pushing me out, by replacing me with someone who didn't understand what I had built, someone who hadn't earned it. The anger was there, buried deep inside me, but it wasn't what hurt the most. It was the loss. The sense of betrayal that came with the realization that I was never as important as I had believed. I had built something for them, something they depended on. But in the end, I was just another cog in the machine, expendable, replaceable. The dismissal wasn't just professional. It felt personal. And that was what stung the most, the hollow feeling that came with knowing all those years of loyalty meant nothing to them. It was the end of something I had believed in, something I had been proud to be a part of. And now it was gone. As I sat back down at my desk, the silence of the office felt different. The hum of the fluorescent lights was louder now, almost suffocating. My hands hovered over the keyboard, but my mind was elsewhere, on the unsettling feeling that had been growing ever since that meeting with Daniel. Something wasn't right. I opened up my laptop, not with any particular urgency, but with a quiet determination. There was something I needed to check, something that had been nagging at me for weeks. As I ran through my usual routine, I pulled up the financial software, just to see if anything had changed since I last checked. It wasn't my job anymore, not officially, but I had always kept an eye on things. What I saw made my stomach twist. Small, seemingly insignificant transactions. Payments to a vendor I didn't recognize. Apex Solutions Group. The transfers had started small, but over the last few months, they'd grown steadily. Nothing too blatant, nothing that would immediately raise alarms, but something about it felt off. A vendor registered only a year ago with a business address that led to a UPS store. I didn't make a sound. My mind was already racing, piecing things together, but I didn't react outwardly. There was no anger, no panic, just a cold, methodical need to understand. The company's financial systems had always been my domain, my responsibility. I had set up secure audit protocols years ago to track unauthorized access, and now it felt like the very system I had built was showing me something I wasn't supposed to see. The payments to Apex didn't make sense. They were inflated, but not enough to be immediately obvious to anyone else. Just enough to slip through unnoticed. The patterns emerged slowly like a puzzle falling into place. The thought gnawed at me. Was this just incompetence or was something bigger at play? Was I looking at a scheme, a cover-up? My fingers hovered over the keys, my mind working through the possibilities. The deeper I looked, the more questions I had. But I wasn't going to react, not yet. Not until I knew for sure. There was something here, something they hadn't counted on. Something I could expose. I stared at the screen, the figures blurring together as the pieces finally clicked into place. The payments to Apex weren't random. They were too calculated, too precise. And then it hit me, one name that I had overlooked before. Brian Wilcox, the CFO. I knew him well enough to recognize the pattern now. The business registration for Apex Solutions Group led straight to him, his brother-in-law, Thomas Wilcox. I felt a shift inside me deep in my chest. My mind raced, but I kept my breathing steady, my hands still. This wasn't just a mistake. This was intentional. This wasn't just about me losing my job. It was about something bigger, something they had been trying to hide, something they had worked to cover up by getting rid of me. I leaned back in my chair, my eyes narrowing as I processed the scope of it all. They had been funneling money, inflating invoices, siphoning funds through this vendor for months. And I had been the one to notice it. Not because I was any more clever than anyone else, but because I had built the system. I had made sure everything was secure, and in doing so, I had left a trail that now pointed directly to the people who had pushed me out. The realization hit me like a gut punch. My firing wasn't just about a cost-cutting measure or some corporate restructure. No, they needed me gone before I could connect the dots. They needed me out of the picture before I could expose the fraud that had been happening right under their noses. The anger, the disbelief, it faded, replaced by something colder. I wasn't going to let this go. This wasn't just a personal betrayal anymore. This was about something much larger. They thought they could silence me, erase me from the company I'd helped build, but they were wrong. I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The calm acceptance I'd been holding on to, it was gone. In its place was a quiet, focused resolve. I wasn't going to be a passive bystander in this. I had a plan now. I was going to make sure the truth came out. And they were going to learn that they had made a very big mistake by underestimating me. I sat there for a while, staring at the screen. The numbers, the emails, the connections, they were all right in front of me, waiting to be used. But I couldn't just react. I couldn't let my anger get in the way. Not yet. I needed to be methodical, precise. If I was going to expose this, I needed evidence, clear, undeniable proof that no one could deny. I didn't pick up the phone. I didn't storm into their offices and demand answers. No, I had learned long ago that doing things the loud way wasn't always the smartest. This wasn't a moment for grand gestures. It was a moment for quiet, calculated moves. I wasn't going to give them any reason to dismiss me or my findings. They had underestimated me once, and now I would make sure they wouldn't get away with it. So I did what I did best. I documented everything. I dug deeper, following the trail of financial irregularities. Each click, each file I pulled, was another piece of the puzzle falling into place. I cross-referenced dates, figures, and vendors. I was no longer the guy packing his desk. I was the guy building a case, one that would leave no room for doubt. The tension was starting to build. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach, that familiar pressure that came with knowing I was on the edge of something big. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about exposing the fraud, about making sure that the people who had thought they could walk all over me would have to face the consequences. I knew I couldn't go to the authorities yet. Not without the kind of proof that would make everything irrefutable. But soon I would. And when I did, they wouldn't see me as the passive employee they could dismiss so easily. They'd see me for what I was, a threat and the one person who had the power to bring everything crashing down. The calm I had been holding on to was slipping away, replaced by a quiet determination. It was time to make my move. I sat on the porch with Andrea, the sun warming our faces as we sipped our coffee in the silence. The world outside felt different now, calmer, somehow, even though the storm I had unleashed was still raging at Meridian. It had been days since the board had received my report, and now the fallout was in full swing. Brian Wilcox had confessed, Daniel was under investigation, and Jason Phillips was fleeing to Brazil. The company I had once served so loyally was unraveling, piece by piece. But I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. I had expected anger, the kind of vindication that came from watching those who had wronged me finally face consequences. But as I sat there, I realized something. What had driven me wasn't the need for revenge. It had never been about making them pay for what they had done to me. It was about doing what was right. It was about justice, not just for me but for the integrity of everything I had built. For the systems I had worked tirelessly to perfect. For the people who had trusted me, for the years of sacrifice that hadn't gone unnoticed, even if they'd been overlooked at times. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. All that remained was a quiet sense of completion. The work was done. I had exposed the truth, and that was enough. There was no need to gloat, no need to revel in the chaos I had set in motion. My decisions had been driven by principle, by a deep-seated need to do the right thing, even when it meant losing everything. The satisfaction came not from their downfall, but from knowing I had stayed true to myself, that I had fought for what was just, and that I had done it without compromising my integrity. I had finally taken control of my story, and that, more than anything, felt like a victory. The sun had set by the time I walked back to the office, and the air felt different, cooler, with a hint of finality. I had just finished meeting with the board, reviewing their offer, and I could sense the weight of the moment. The past few days had been a whirlwind, but now here I was, standing in front of Meridian's headquarters again. Not as the person they had discarded, but as someone they had been forced to reckon with. The company had changed, at least in the way it looked at me. I wasn't just the guy in the background anymore. I was the new Chief Information Security Officer, a role created in the wake of the mess they had tried to bury. And that was where the bittersweetness settled in. This wasn't the victory I had imagined when I first started down this path. It wasn't about personal revenge or some dramatic moment of triumph. It was about forcing the company to face its flaws and implement real, lasting change. I hadn't expected to be offered a position, let alone one with this kind of responsibility. But now that it was mine, I wasn't sure what to make of it. Part of me still couldn't shake the feeling that the company I had worked for, the one I had believed in, was no longer the place it used to be. The old loyalty I had felt was gone, replaced by something else. Something more practical, more rooted in reality. But that was okay. I was okay with it. I had grown emotionally and professionally. The anger I had once felt, the need to make them all pay, had faded. I had realized that the only person I needed to answer to was myself. And in that realization, I found a sense of peace I hadn't expected. As I walked past the familiar desks, now populated by a new team, I felt a calm resolve settle over me. I wasn't the same person I had been when I started here. And maybe that was the true victory, not the title or the recognition, but the person I had become along the way.